Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video I'll be showing you how to get all 12 paths completed in the Sildine Subterrane variant dungeon. Each path provides an additional entry in your VNC journal for this dungeon, and finishing them all allows you to formally complete the dungeon, do a follow-up story quest, and unlock a new mount. Fortunately, most of these aren't too complicated. All the same, use the timestamps in the description of the video to skip to a journal entry you're looking to complete. At the start of the Sildine Subterrane, you are presented with 3 directions to choose from: left, middle, and right. Each of them has 4 total paths to complete in your journal, with all of the important decisions happening after the first boss but before the second one. I will cover each path, the decisions you can make, and how they impact the boss mechanics, though we won't be going in depth into each of the bosses and how to beat them. I'll leave that for you to have fun with. For all 3 paths, a Hecaton Share will be the first boss. A decision you make right before the boss will affect the Subterranean Shudder skill, causing it to have a different effect. Bear in mind this has no impact at all on your final path, but you may find one mechanic easier than the other or simply wish to see them all. First, the left path. Before the first boss, you'll be given the option to flip a culvert switch before progressing. Not flipping the switch leaves the drains plugged and the arena filthy. When the boss uses Subterranean Shudder, it will spew poison puddles around the arena. The boss will then dash through the arena, knocking the player back. Just knockback resist or make sure the knockback doesn't send you into the puddles. If you do flip the switch and the arena is cleaned, Subterranean Shudder instead performs a knockback from a set point. You'll need to do this knockback and the standard barrel mechanic at the same time. So either knockback resist and stand in the safe spot, or ride the knockback next to one of the donut AoE barrels. Now on to the important stuff. Entry number 1 is actually one of the more complicated ones. Just progress through the dungeon until you get to a room full of yellow and green ore sacks. You'll need to pick up the green sack to the northeast, sitting atop a pile of rubble, and the yellow ore sack in the southeast corner on a tiny little dirt hill. Place these on the stone plinths and a teleporter will appear in the room. Once you teleport and clear the mobs out, you'll notice a door on the west side of the room you're in. Stand by it until it becomes interactable. Open it and you'll be all set for entry number 1. I recommend just pulling the mobs over to this door in advance, as accidentally triggering dialogue from Nanamo by walking over to her before opening this door will prevent you from opening it. With that door open, we move on to the left path boss Silky. For entry number 1, its mechanic is Eastern Ewer. Several minutes into the fight, Silky will one by one summon Ewers on the north side of the room. They just gradually move across, so avoid touching them while they're doing this and while doing Silky's other mechanics. For entry number 2, simply do the exact same thing you did for entry number 1, but don't open that extra door. Instead, just follow Nanamo and progress to the boss directly. This time, Silky will instead do Wash Out, summoning a water pillar on one side of the room. This will knock you all the way across, so find a spot that won't send you into a puddle or into the wall. For entry number 3, we need to go back to that ore sack room, so progress the dungeon up until that point. Pick any of the sacks other than the ones that I mentioned before, and instead of a portal, the door will just open. In this room are several puffs on the ground, and running through them will cause them to explode and impair your vision. Entry number 3 requires that you pop all of the puffs in this room. I just did this while I was fighting the monsters to be safe. This time, Silky will summon the same destroyed puff circles all over the arena, before summoning a wall of brooms that will sweep across. When the brooms go to sweep the puffs, they will spin around in place for a few seconds. Use this to identify gaps in the wall of brooms and move out of their way. Entry number 4 is the same thing, except you have to avoid popping any of the puffs. You need to step right on them to pop them, so just pull the mobs into the entranceway and then navigate around them after the fighting is done. Silky this time will still summon a wall of brooms, but instead of sweeping across, they flip across gradually at fixed intervals. Just look for the spots between their jumps and position accordingly. And with that, we're done with the left path of this dungeon. Now, while our next numerical entries of 5, 6, and 7 are from the rightmost path, instead, we're going to tackle 8 to 11 next, which all come from the middle path. Before the first boss, you'll be given a chance to turn a valve left or right. Turning the valve to the left raises wind turbines next to the arena. When Subterranean Shudder is used, one side of the room will activate, pulling you towards them after a brief delay. You just need to line up with the donut AoE barrel and get pulled towards that one. If you turn the valve to the right, pathways over the turbines appear instead. Boulders will fall onto them before rolling across the arena while barrels are exploding. You just need to stand in one of the 2 rows safe from the boulder falls while also standing away from the barrels. Now on to our actual entries. Entry number 8 is a bog standard run to the end. When you get to the scales, as much as you might be tempted to do them correctly, just do them wrong. Press them and activate them without putting any symbols on the scales, or just ensure that any symbols you do place on them aren't helmet left and fruit right. After this, you come to an interactable that lets you pull a left or right lever. The right lever is entry number 8, while the left lever is entry number 9. The boss, Gladiator of Sil D, of course, adjusts his mechanics to which you pull. Pulling the right lever causes the Gladiator to summon small wind currents around the arena. Stepping into one will knock you into the air and deal some damage, but it will also let you avoid the boss's shattering steel attack if you time it correctly. So around 80 to 90% of the cast bar step into a wind current in order to go into the air and avoid the attack. If you pull the left lever for entry number 9, you'll instead have 4 proximity AoEs come down one at a time, leaving behind a small comet. 3 of them are shattered, while 1 of them is whole. You'll want to use the undamaged comet to line of sight the shattering steel from the boss. For entries number 10 and 11, you'll instead want to solve the scales correctly. Put the helmet on the left scale and the fruit on the right before interacting with the scales. This opens a teleporter that takes you to a whole nother room. After clearing it out, you'll be given the option to interact with either the Nald statue or the Thal statue. For entry number 10, interact with the Nald statue and progress to the boss room. The Gladiator will now use Hell's Visage, summoning a cross of visages across the room. They will aim AoEs through all but one corner, so find the safe corner of the room to survive. This happens a second time, but the second time it will be paired with a Sculptor's Passion from the boss, which is just a line AoE in front of him. Just dodge everything, and you'll be fine. For entry number 11, interact with the Thal statue instead. This time when the boss uses Hateful Visage, it will summon 2 in different corners. These will do rotating line AoEs, so you just want to find the safe quadrant to avoid both of them. In the case that you struggle with these types of mechanics, I recommend at least finding a spot that's safe from one of them, and then popping Rampart if you have it equipped, or using defensive cooldowns if you're playing tank. Also be sure to top yourself off just in case. Each laser does about 55,000 damage, so if you can ensure that you only get hit once and you're healthy, you should be fine. That covers everything from the middle path. Finally, the right path. This has entries 5, 6, 7, and 12. For the first boss, it's a bit of a weird way to influence its mechanics. The final trash pack before the first boss has a big Malboro in it. If you kill the Malboro first, the room will be filled with ceruleum. When Subterranean Shudder occurs, 2 squares will be filled with ceruleum and you're not supposed to step on those, while a rotating AoE from the boss will start on the other side. Get to the safe side of the room, then follow behind the rotating AoE in order to stay safe. If you kill any mob before the Malboro in that pack, Subterranean Shudder instead just does back-to-back AoEs in opposite quadrants of the room. And that's all for the first boss variations across all 3 paths, but mind you that if your fight drags on, you might see these mechanics combined with other attacks that the Hecaton Share has, but they're not that difficult. Okay, home stretch for entries. Entries number 5 and 6 simply require you to progress normally through the path until the final boss door. It will give you a choice between a Blessed Spark and a Sacred Fire. For entry number 5, select the Spark. This will cause the boss, Shadowcaster Zealous Ga, to empower brands with a knockback. You can knockback resist this effect, or just get next to the brand and aim yourself towards the farthest spot open in the arena. I do recommend knockback resisting one later in the fight that gets combined with portaling fire orbs. For entry number 6, select the Sacred Fire option instead. This occasionally summons arcane fonts, the squares that appear around the arena as you see here. After a brief delay, these expand and blow up on the entire row or column they are in, relative to the open square itself. So just avoid standing adjacent to them wherever they appear. When they get combined with portals, they will always move over to the teleporter before firing, so get out of any of the rows or columns with a portal in them. It's only row or columns, by the way, not both, so there's usually one pretty big safe spot. For entry number 7, things get a lot trickier. After defeating the first boss, you're given a choice of a lever to pull to progress further. Pull the right lever and go until you enter a room with 5 drakes. You will need to kill the drakes from largest to smallest. So, father, mother, brother, sister, and then drakeling. Doing this will reveal a secret path. After defeating the next enemy group, there will be an incense burner to pick up on the right side of the room. Grab it and then go pop the boss. This entry is the opposite of entry number 5 mechanically. Now the boss will empower his brands with a pull-in AoE instead. Get far enough away from the brands so that they don't pull you into the point-blank AoE they do after, or knockback resist as you have been. Finally, we get to entry number 12. This is the secret path that leads to a whole nother boss. First, start down the right path and progress through as if you were doing entry number 7. So take the right lever, kill the drakes from largest to smallest, and collect that incense burner. However, when you get to the tomb where you would normally spawn the boss, do not interact with it. Instead, target it and perform 4 emotes sequentially to trigger a new scene. You'll need to use /bow, /respect, /vpose, and /kneel in that order. You can just make a macro with a 3-second wait between these to make it easy. And if that sounds random, well, little do you know, all your hints to unlock all these endings you've been obtaining as you've been collecting the different notes and the different interactables around the dungeon. So while it sounds crazy, the game actually gives you the hints to get to this point. So yeah, target the tomb without interacting with it, use those 4 emotes in that order, and this will open a door on the far end of the room and take you to the true secret boss, the Thorn Knight. Since this boss only has 1 set of attacks, I'll leave this one for you to enjoy on your own. It's a fun boss, so just enjoy your time with it, and if you die, just get up and try again. Not a whole lot of pressure on you. That covers everything you need to know for all 12 of the path entries. Once you're done, go to Ul'dah and speak to Kokoshou to accept the quest for Coin, Country, and Comrades, right next to the Chocobo stables. This will trigger a final cutscene with Nanamo and complete the story for this variant dungeon. Also, don't forget that all of the currency you've been picking up the entire time can actually be exchanged for some really cool glam and other things back in Old Sharlayan where you initially accepted the quest. You can even get some minions as drops from the different variant dungeons and paths, so if you don't get those, try to run it again. You might want some of those things. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for me. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for more Final Fantasy XIV videos, as you've come to expect. I'll see you all in the next one, and until then, take care.